Good evening, everybody. I'm Pat Jenny, president of the Salisbury Forum, and on behalf of our board, welcome all of you here this evening to our program with Anthony Marx, who is president of the New York Public Library, and who's going to talk about the library in changing times. I imagine that most of you here tonight, like me, are big fans of your local library. The libraries in most of the towns in this region are treasured community assets. They provide books to read, but also programs for everyone from toddlers to seniors, a quiet place to conduct research, or just sit and read. Many of them up here are housed in beautiful historic buildings. But all of the libraries have been caught in the current vortex of dramatic changes in technology, as well as political debates over censorship, for example. Anthony Marx will describe the choices that the nation's largest library has made in response. And in fact, we just come from a dinner at which Tony was speaking with 6 of our library directors here locally. It was a great conversation. Next month, the forum will present the last program of 2025 on Friday, December 12th, here at Housatonic Valley Regional High School, with 2 professors from the University of Texas at Austin, Dr. Dean Spears and Dr. Michael Geruso. They are the authors of a 2025 book called After the Spike: Population, Progress, and the Case for People. They're going to discuss how declining birth rates around the world, around the globe, as many areas are developing, might be a challenge to our ability to address environmental, social, and other problems around the world. As the forum winds down its 20th anniversary, the celebration of our 20th anniversary, we would like to thank all of you who have already responded to our recent request for your donations. You already know that for 20 years, we provide programs that are free and open to the public. Your gifts cover our modest operating costs. So if you have not yet made a donation, please go to our website, salisburyforum.org, and hit the donate button. We've recently set up an account at Schwab to accept gifts of stock. So you will contact us at our general email, info@Salisbury-Forum, and get the information that you will need. Now to introduce our speaker. Anthony Marx has been president and CEO of the New York Public Library since 2011. During his term, the library has increased access to ebooks, expanded computer classes, helped expand internet access to families of low-income students. Prior to his post at the library, he served as president of Amherst College from 2003 to 2011, where he tripled the enrollment of low-income students. Mr. Marx was a political science professor at Columbia University, focusing on South African politics, and has written more than a dozen scholarly articles and 3 books on South Africa and nationalism, and has earned a number of awards. He has a bachelor's degree from Yale University and 2 masters and a PhD from Princeton. So please join me in welcoming Anthony Marx to the Salisbury Forum.
Well, thank you, Pat, and thank you all for being here. A special shout out also to Jamie Lehrer for making the invitation, and also my best friend since 7th grade, who my son is named after. Josh Ginsburg is here in the audience together with Katie Kinsolving, and what can I say? I'm honored to be a part of the Salisbury Forum, and I'm delighted to have an excuse to come visit my dear friends and to get out of the city on a beautiful Friday. So I'm thrilled to be a part of the Salisbury Forum and to help you celebrating your 20th season. That is amazing. The mission of the forum to host conversations that foster a deeper understanding of issues that affect our lives globally and locally. That's a mission that we warm to as well at the library. And, you know, look, we live in complicated times, challenging times. That makes these kinds of conversations all the more important as we try to keep in touch with each other, as we try to ensure a civil and civic society, as we think about how to not lose sight of empathy in a world that seems to be moving away from it. In all of that, libraries play a critical role. They are, in New York and in your communities, essential, foundational, central parts of their communities, spaces where all people can gather, can learn, and grow. And if you believe in Enlightenment values and the values that America was founded on, you understand the connection between what the libraries do and what the fate of the nation will be. Libraries were founded on a simple belief, an Enlightenment belief, that everyone has the ability to learn, everyone should have the opportunity to learn and to advance themselves, and that therefore, to do that, everyone should have access to information and the tools for learning, the things that libraries provide, which is why libraries in New York, in your communities, and across the nation are, by all polling data, the most trusted civic institutions that currently exist. We take that responsibility seriously because all libraries take it seriously. We are also, as Pat mentioned, the largest library system in the country. Very quickly, let me just give a quick summary of the system that I work at. We are the largest public library system because we have close to 100 branch neighborhoods. That's in Manhattan, the Bronx, and Staten Island, not in Brooklyn and Queens. I grew up in Washington Heights using the New York Public Library. I assumed the New York Public Library meant all 5 boroughs. Only when I got the job did they tell me that I'd lost 2 boroughs. Nobody really understands why, when the rest of the city of New York was coming together as a single city unit, the Queens and Brooklyn libraries were left out, but they do great work, and we're proud to partner with them. We are also a major research library. The main building that you're all familiar with the lions out front, humanities and social science largely, as well as the Library for Performing Arts, which has just celebrated its 60th birthday at Lincoln Center, the premier collection of theater, dance, whoops, I've just lost one. Theater, dance, and music, as well as the Schomburg Library in Harlem, which is celebrating its 100th anniversary this year as the premier institution for African American studies, archives, and fellowships of the works. We are, just to be clear, not a city agency. We were founded originally as the Astor, Lennox, and Tilden Trust. Mr. Astor was the richest man in New York. Lennox was the most powerful politician in New York, should have been president of the United States. And Lennox was the greatest collector. They came together to found a research library that would be open to the public with their private resources and collections. About a decade later, Andrew Carnegie, who was then the richest man in the world, said, I believe in branch libraries. It's where he had educated himself in Scotland. And he made a deal and said, I will pay to build branch libraries in every neighborhood of New York. The city will provide the land that those are built on, and the city will pay to operate them. But he didn't trust the city to run the library. So he asked the Astor, Lennox, and Tilden Trust as a private foundation to run the libraries on behalf of the city, and 60% of our funding comes from the city. That makes for interesting conversations once a year, at least once a year, with the mayor and the city council. We have always gotten increases in city funding because millions of New Yorkers love their libraries and make that clear when the city fathers are tempted to do otherwise. We also have a $1.8 billion endowment, which is pretty nice after 130 odd years. And we raise something like $80 to $100 million of private funding a year. We do that without having any positions in a college that we can help to offer, and I can't help you if your elbow goes out. So, we have amazing philanthropy that is really there to support what the library does, and that is a beautiful, beautiful thing. Now, as Pat says, we face some challenges. We're going to talk about some of those. Obviously, what the library engages in remains vital, but it is under some threat. We live in an era of misinformation that is spreading faster than the truth. This little amazing device that I have in my pocket, many of you have in your pocket, does amazing things. It also does some terrifying things. Reading, nationally, is on the decline. Long-form reading is on the decline. Attention spans are on the decline. Surprise, surprise, when everyone is glued to their phones with constant quick fixes. We have less time to think about our positions, and that is terrifying to me. Inequality in America is growing to record numbers. As I said, technology is distracting, and we live in an era of isolation, despite having this in our pockets, and division, greater than perhaps we've ever seen in America, or certainly competing with some of our dark moments in our history. The good news is, reading at the library is up, whether it's physical, which is how I read, or online, or audible books, all of which are growing at fast paces. Our job is to make sure that that pattern continues, that more people are reading more, because we believe in reading. We believe that it is irreplaceable for informing people with truthful information, for helping them understand themselves, helping them understand other people, helping to build empathy between people, lower divisions between people, all the things that I at least believe, maybe some of you believe, are getting lost and that need to be bolstered and reclaimed. I've said we live in an era of misinformation. We also live in an era of artificial intelligence. Some of you may have noticed. We believe at the library that artificial intelligence carries great potential and also grave risks. It can produce impressive results instantly, and it can produce fake results instantly. One of the sort of notable things is that for the first time in 130 years, people are going up to the research desk in the Rosemead Reading Room in the main building, handing our librarians citations and saying, can I get this? I read this, and this thing was cited as the background or the proof of what I was reading. Can I have a copy so I can read further, deeper? And we'll look it up, and it turns out they were made up. That's never happened before. Artificial intelligence is hallucinating, literally hallucinating. And the market that is driving artificial intelligence doesn't seem to care. It cares about giving fast results and keeping you glued to it. It doesn't care whether it's accurate. The library cares whether it's accurate. We are champions for reliable information and for scholarly integrity, Truth and accuracy matter deeply to us, and we are deeply troubled by the latest version of technology that seems to be undermining those core beliefs. We live in a moment when information is abundant, but its veracity is not clear. So we're saying, how can we help in this moment? One of the things we're doing is we're going to train New Yorkers, as well as ourselves, about artificial intelligence so that we understand it better, understand what it can do, what it should do, and what it can't do and shouldn't do. We're also trying to figure out how to use it not just in training people, but in the services that we provide, because we live in an era where, for all the criticism, we have to keep up with what people expect based on what they can get from these gizmos in their pockets. That becomes the expectation, and we have to meet those expectations. So we're doing a couple things, just to give you an idea of our aspirations. One is, you may believe or assume that everything that's been written is available on this machine. That is simply not true. We have 65 million books, and you can't read most of those online, in large part because the Supreme Court still protects copyright and says people who write for a living deserve some remuneration, and companies, including Google, that scanned 40 million books, can't put the full content up because it's not compensating the rights holders. We're not Google. We are the largest library, the most public library, and in fact, in the research library side, we are the most used research library on the planet. Mostly because the competition are universities, libraries, which are great, but they are constrained and they're paid, who can use them by the community of university faculty or students or alums. We're also not a national library. Library of Congress is amazing, but it is basically used by members of Congress, though you might not be able to tell. I didn't say that. So we have an aspiration, and I confess we've had this aspiration now for over a decade, which is we want everything that's ever been written, that's in the research library, to be available online for free to anyone on the planet. So you shouldn't have to come to New York City to do your research, to read deeply into the archive or into the what we call the long tail of material. Anyone should be able to do that. And we're working at doing that while protecting copyright. So we've said to Google, give us those 40 million scans, don't make us rescan it. We're trying to figure out how to scan the remainder, and there's a huge remainder still to scan. And then we're asserting our right as a public library to put material up. Certainly the stuff that's in the public domain, that's easy, but also things that are in copyright but out of print. And our argument is, A, we're a library, this is what we do. But B, it's not available for anybody to read. If we can make it available, we're not hurting the copyright holders. We're helping to create a market for their material that is inaccessible because it's out of print. And if demand grows, then we will pay for the rights to lend that material, and we'll have to decide how much we can afford to do that. And other libraries will do the same. But you should have access here in Connecticut, if you're doing scholarly work or deep research, to the same amazing collections that coming to 42nd Street would make available to you. And going back to AI, we know that when you have 65 million items available, you will get lost in the sea of that. You will need help searching, navigating, understanding what to look for, where to find it. AI can help with that. We want to do that in a way that doesn't produce hallucinations, though. So the idea, simply put, is to create our own version of AI that is based only on the collections that we have, that have been validated by publication, that are as close to true as we believe is possible, and that you'll be able to search within that bounded garden of information in a way that you could trust the results and not produce citations that were made up. This is going to take us some time. It is going to take us some money. Stay tuned. We are working at it. But we believe that is an example of what the technology today should make possible. We are also concerned about social isolation. We are not simply custodians of books, whether it's physical or electronic. We are interested in seeing an increase in the number of readers and in building community around reading and all the things related to it. So what does that mean? It means we are, as Pat mentioned, our branch libraries in every neighborhood have always been most beloved, most used, most trusted, but they were basically passive spaces. Spaces where you came, you read, you used the collection, you enjoyed the heat or air conditioning, especially if you didn't have those at home. You enjoyed the digital connection, especially if you didn't have those at home. But that was pretty much where it stopped. We have now become education centers in every neighborhood because we could and because we should. And so, starting with pre-K literacy programs, story times, often had been the bread and butter, but we've expanded those massively. Now we also offer homework help, after-school programs, college guidance, because at least in New York City, the college guidance counselors have basically disappeared from the schools. We'll help you with workforce development if you're looking for a job. If you're an adult, the two main areas we work in are English language as a second, English language instruction as a second language. We're the largest provider for free in the city of New York. That means we are serving, yes, immigrants. We are committed to the immigrant community. We don't ask for any papers. In fact, we don't want to know who you are because we don't want anybody to find you through us. And that is going gangbusters. We're also the largest provider of free computer skills training, from how to turn it on, to how to do email, to how to program, to now AI. We are committed to those activities, and I'll just say as an educator, which is what I am, it's powerful stuff when you run education programs that are meeting real needs. Nobody comes to the library to get certified. You don't have to go through an admissions office. You don't get a degree. All we can offer you is the information that you want. So you're not going to come if we're not offering the information you actually want. There's a powerful discipline to that. For those of you who are keeping track, that's a sort of Chicago economics argument, which is a little surprising coming from someone named Marx. But it's true, and it's powerful. And we're trying to figure out more than that. We do gatherings for communities around authors, around community activities. We're trying to develop more book clubs, both in person and online. We know that the online material that we provide is limited by who has access to broadband. It is shocking that 1.5 million to 2 million New York City residents don't have broadband at home. Let me repeat, 1.5 million to 2 million New Yorkers do not have broadband at home. Imagine in the pandemic, you couldn't do your schoolwork, you couldn't do your work, you couldn't communicate with your friends and family, email or what have you. That's crazy, crazy. People come into the libraries to use our Wi-Fi, which is great, but you have to come into the library. What if you need to be home? What if you are at home? So we're experimenting. We're seeing whether we can broadcast broadband from our branches and create a free utility level of broadband throughout the communities so that everyone has at least a basic level of connectivity. That is where we all are living at this point, and there are still too many of us that are left out. But we also want you to come in. So we're renovating our branches. Many of them had been left to rot for decades. That's how city politics work. We've spent $1 billion so far in renovating our branches, especially in the poorest neighborhoods. And it's amazing to see the boost, not amazing, it's wonderful to see the boost of attendance that comes after we renovate one of these buildings. They've always been loved, they've always been used, but when they shine, people come in much larger numbers. We have to keep working at this. We know this won't be easy. We know we're pushing up against real threats. You heard from Pat some of those. I mean, books are being banned in America. I never thought I would live to say that. You know, I was a scholar. I lived in South Africa during apartheid. I was a scholar of anti-apartheid efforts. I never thought these kinds of things would be happening in the country I love. But here we are. So the New York Public Library is unbanning books. We're putting them up online and sending them to Texas or Florida or anywhere else where people want them. You know, we'll do whatever we can. We'll continue our English language instruction for immigrants, even though we have ICE patrolling outside of our branches, trying to intimidate the people who rely on us to learn the basic skills that they need. We're not going to stop. We've seen the Institute for Museum and Library Services and other national funders like the National Endowment for the Humanities or the Arts gutted. We've seen our dear friend, the 14th Librarian of Congress, Carla Hayden, fired. We've seen democracy under attack. We've seen access to knowledge and free expression under attack. So we will fight back. It's really that simple. Because we have to. Because it's what we're here to do. And it's because we can. We get less than 0.5% of our funding from the federal government. That gives us room to move. Again, we're not going to be stupid. We're not going to draw fire unnecessarily. But we are going to stand up for what we believe in. And we're going to be innovative. I mentioned that we spend $1 billion, we just spent $1 billion on the branches. The neighborhood I grew up in, Inwood, Washington Heights, beautiful, sweet library that I loved. It was sad. It had not really been touched for decades. It was time for a new library in Inwood. And in a rare moment of something, I had the wisdom to ask, what about the air above the library? Turns out nobody had asked about that in 130 years. So we did something we'd never done before. We made a deal with a donor, with the Robin Hood Foundation, with the city, and we got a new, brand new, bigger, fabulous library. And we built 175 units of fully affordable housing above the library. We're not in the affordable housing business. We're in the library business. But if we have air that could be monetized, that also serves the city of New York and its citizens in ways that they need, then why wouldn't we do that? So now, wherever we're renovating a branch library, we're asking ourselves, can we build affordable housing above it? Stay tuned. We hope the new mayor will notice. As we move forward, it is our job in all these ways to empower our patrons, to bring the full power and resources of our libraries to bear, and to do so for free. Everything we do, that all libraries do, is for free. That's why people love us. It's why they support us when budget squeeze comes. It's why we are the most trusted institution, because we are delivering. People trust what delivers for them. It's a basic rule of democracy that others seem to have lost sight of. And under moments of threat, we will stand up. Because we can, because we should, because we will, and in part because other components of civil society are not standing up in the ways that we would like them to. That's not a new mission for us. There have been dark parts of American history before. Just finished reading Adam Hochschild's book about America in 1917 to 1921, let alone the Civil War or other dark moments. You know, we have an amazing history that I am proud of and I am patriotic fully. But we've had some dark moments that we have gotten through and learned from and built from. And this is one of those. We don't change what we do in those moments. We double down on what we do in those moments. And it becomes more important even if we're just doing the same thing. Never mind the innovations that we're trying to do. Let me close by reminding you that when this country was founded, and we're about to celebrate the 250th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence, we're going to have amazing exhibits, amazing public programs. It was the same moment when the first public library was founded by Ben Franklin. Libraries and democracy. Libraries and the possibility of learning, reading, opportunity have always been intertwined. We have new tools to do that they didn't have 250 years ago. We're using them. We're trying to figure out how to use them in a helpful way, in a productive way, true to our values. There's more we can do, but it still goes back to our founding. Our founding as a library, and our founding as a country. I am confident in the future of this country because those values are deeply ingrained in all of you, in all of Americans, and they will out. They will come forward no matter what. Thank you all. I am happy to take questions on any subject. Uh-oh. Yes, please. Yep. There are microphones, I think.
I want to do this. I want to do this.
It's coming around. There we go.
I'm just curious how your background as a scholar in South Africa informs the work that you do, your views of the library, its role, its possibilities, etc. And maybe not at all, but it sounds like it does.
It's sort of a autobiographical question, so I'm going to answer it that way, though I try to shy away from that for whatever reasons. But so when I was in college, South Africa was all the rage, and I yelled and screamed like other students, but I didn't know anything about the country. And after I graduated and spent a couple of years working in Philly, I thought I should learn about this country, not just sort of assume I knew. I was lucky. I had a friend at the Ford Foundation who introduced me to the leader of the largest nonprofit NGO for education, anti-apartheid education in the country. Met him. He said, well, I can't pay you, obviously, you're a white American, but if you can make your way to South Africa, I'm sure we can find something useful for you to do. And he did. I did. He did. They said, you know, the universities, the great universities, and they are great universities of South Africa, say that they want black students. We can argue whether that was true. Some cases yes, some cases no. But we can't find any because apartheid education has made sure that there aren't any prepared or able to compete to get into them. And he said, none of us have time here, we're all doing various other education programs, But you have time. You know, we don't know who you are, but we'll trust you. If nothing happens, we haven't lost anything. See if you can do something to organize. And the plan, which I was handed as a one-page proposal, was let's create a college. In this case, it was 2 colleges, Cape Town and Johannesburg. They would recruit 100 students a year, so just selectively, and give them 1 year of quality education. The kind of education that Amherst provides. Residential, great faculty, great classes, great books. And let's see whether we can get them to the place where they can compete and successfully get into and finish the great universities. And that's what we did. And that's what they did. And it changed my life. And yes, it guides what I do in the library, and it's guided everything I've ever done. For 2 reasons. One, I was living in a country where people were ready to die for what they believed in. I had not experienced that before. You know, people were talking about democracy because they didn't have it, not what the best dishwasher was, which we have. That was powerful stuff for a 23-year-old. But more importantly, I learned the power of education. If 1 year of quality education could undo 12 or 15 years of purposefully bad education under apartheid, then that is a power that is, you can't contain. Because people's ability to learn, to withstand and move beyond awfulness can't be stopped. You just need to give them the tools, the ability to do so. The rest of my life came from that lesson. Whether it was the scholarship I did as a faculty member at Columbia, whether it's the work we did at Amherst to say there were more students who could join that amazing, amazing college and benefit from it. And it certainly informs what we do at the New York Public Library, because the library is about giving everyone that opportunity to learn and to believing that everyone is capable of taking advantage of those opportunities. Those are my core beliefs. I think they are the core beliefs of America. And they guide everything we do at the library. All the innovations I talk to, all the work is informed by that simple idea, and I learned it at that moment. So I hope that answers the question. Please. Do you see anyone? Oh, yeah, sure.
Barring the all too real possibility of nuclear war before our grandchildren are adults, what's your take on whether print on acid-free paper or digital storage and the whole internet system is going to last longer historically?
Great question, thank you. Well, first on the nuclear threat, I confess I'd forgotten about the nuclear threat. There's so much else going on. I hadn't forget about it, but I wasn't paying, it wasn't front of mind the way it has been elsewhere. And I recently watched House of Dynamite on Netflix. That was a rude reminder of just how close we are still to that particular, unthinkable disaster. So I recommend the movie. It's not much fun, but it is powerful, and we need to be reminded that this issue remains, even amidst the other day-to-day news that we're all fixated on. Look, books have proven to be and remain the best storage unit format that man or humanity has ever invented. There is nothing else that will, if you put it in the right storage facility, it will last for centuries. and be readable after centuries. Whereas digital decays, we may not have the right readers for the formats it was digitized on. So I'm a big believer in books, and we invest mightily in books. We invest mightily in the preservation and storage of books. We look for creative ways to do that. So I'll give you a quick story. The New York Public Library shares, we have 65 million items. We can't possibly keep them all physically at 42nd Street. Just not possible. We have about 5 million books and then lots and lots of archives there. But we can't house all of our books on 42nd Street. It's not physically possible. And the truth is, most of the books in the collection are not things people are demanding readily. We keep the stuff people are demanding readily on site. We send to off-site storage the things that we are responsible for having in case you want it, so we can get it to you, but we can't keep it all on site. That's just a reality of a library of our scale. We have off-site storage in Princeton, New Jersey. Don't ask me why. And when I arrived, we did that in partnership, if you will, with Princeton and Columbia, who had their own off-site storage next to ours in the same facility. Again, we had this sort of naive thought. We said, well, why are we buying 3 copies, these 3 institutions, of a book that probably no one is going to look at for 20 years, but we all need to have it? Why are we buying 3 copies to sit next to each other in an off-site storage? Let's get together and do this. So we combined the collections. Stay with me for one more minute. After we'd combined the collections, Harvard joined us. The richest university in the world, I think. And just recently, Yale joined us. Not too shabby either. Now, the 5 great libraries of the Northeast of America don't just share storage, we share a collection. We spend less on, we're not each buying 5 copies of that book. We're buying 1 copy if that's all we need to make sure we have it accessible. And this is the part I love, we tripled, I think, the size of the research collection available to the public for free. Didn't cost us a penny. And we took collections that were privatized at Harvard, Yale, Princeton, and Columbia and made them available to the public for the first time. It's interesting to me that in the English language, there is no word for the opposite of privatization. It says something. But that's what we did. If you have a word, I'm in the market. So we can be creative, we can use physical collections, we can preserve them, and we can make them more accessible to more people. At the same time, as I said, we also recognize not everyone is going to be able to come to our physical locations to read our physical books. And we have a responsibility as the largest research library on the planet, the most used anyway, to make it available digitally. Personally, I'm agnostic. However you want to read. My job, our job, is to make sure that you can. And that whatever you want to read is available to you and that you can trust it. That's our job. Go ahead.
I was asking you, I don't feel you've really answered my question.
Try me again.
Well, you're obviously a smart guy to be assuming the positions you already have on your CV. I was asking you for an historical prediction. Which medium do you think, looking 2 or 3 centuries ahead, barring nuclear war, as I said at the beginning, is more likely to last?
Okay. I believe It's a great question, so you're pressing me. I will try my best. And I won't be around to see whether I'm right or not. I believe that the physical collections will still, you may not agree with this, be important and be preserved, and those will be powerful as historical material. But that more of an increasing percentage, almost to all of it, that is produced newly will be produced in digital formats. And we will have to find ways to ensure that it is preserved, that it is trustworthy, and that it can be accessed. And I think, we will be able to do that, but only if libraries, amongst others, press for that outcome. The markets by themselves, the commercial producers of material, the commercial AI vendors, don't necessarily have an interest in solving this question. We do. So we have to make sure that as more and more of it becomes online, that it meets that criteria.
Would you describe the library facilities that are available to the public high schools in New York City?
Sure. So the question, the mic wasn't on. The question is, what are the library facilities for public high schools? The answer is not what they should be. About 15 years ago, basically the public schools said we can't afford to maintain libraries at the level that we've been maintaining in the schools. And, they stopped hiring librarians and they stopped investing in collections. And that was, for all the reasons I've tried to make clear here tonight, that was terrifying to me, to us, to libraries, to people who hold those values. But that was the reality. So when I arrived that was happening, and I went to go see the school's chancellor, who, by the way, is currently the president of the Queens Public Library System, so he shares these values. And I said, we need a solution to this. And he said, well, I can't afford libraries. I need to invest every penny I have in more teachers so that I can bring down the student-teacher ratio. And I'm not going to argue with that. But I was like, well, we have millions and millions of books on shelves sitting there. And you can't afford libraries. So maybe we should get together. And after that, the largest library system in the country and the largest school system in the country started partnering on this front. And simply put, what we did is we became the public libraries, or the libraries for the schools. This is true in about half the public schools of New York at this point. We're still building it. Where we say, whatever you're studying in your classroom that day or that month, we will bring you a collection of books on that topic and we will put it in your classroom for the students to use. And when you're done with that topic, we will move that collection to some other classroom. Again, it's looking for efficiencies that no one was looking for before. Would I prefer that there were amazing libraries in every school? Of course I would. I'm not in charge of that. All I can offer is, here are our books. And it's entertaining to note this solution only works because we're not France, meaning everyone isn't studying exactly the same topic at the same time. So you can move books around depending on what is being studied in this classroom or this school, which is different from another classroom or school. I'm not pretending it's a substitution. I think it's really important for students to have the experience of being in libraries, not just with collections on what they're studying, but to sort of move around the collections and hit things spontaneously and whatever catches their fancy. But I can't fix that for the schools. I can make sure that that's still the case in the branch libraries. And I can make sure that we invite those students after school to come in and have that experience. And providing after school, for instance, or homework help, which many of these students can't find anywhere else, is a way to get them in the door. Or We now have 50 teen centers in the poorest neighborhoods of New York with all kinds of gizmos. Bring them in the door, right? With maker space and music studios. And then they notice that there's a library around them and that they can wander the shelves and find things they weren't even thinking they would look for. I believe in the power of that. I'll tell a quick story if you don't mind. The Carnegie, as I said, paid for the original branches, and we have about 40 of them that are still Carnegie mansions, and those are fabulous. We can't build affordable housing above them. They're landmarked. We wouldn't touch them. We just fix them up. They're very expensive to fix up, but we fix them up. In those old branches, the top floor typically was what was called superintendent's custodial apartments. Because in the day, we had custodians living in the library to make sure that they could continue to shovel coal to keep the libraries warm at night. Fast forward, in recent years, those custodial apartments were left empty because we didn't need custodians because we had better systems for HVAC. And the real estate sat empty. And we thought, that's crazy in New York. That's just crazy, empty real estate. So we've converted, I think now, all those custodial apartments into education centers, into teen centers, using it to meet the needs of the neighborhood and of the people who live there. The story I will tell, sorry for this, I love this story. We were opening one of these early on in Washington Heights, I think. And after we go through the motions and cut ribbons and do all that stuff that we do, a very dignified elderly black guy in the back raises his hand and says, "Can I say something?" And I say, "Sure." He stands up and he said, "I grew up on this floor, in this custodial apartment. My dad was the custodian here. And every night when the library was closed, I went down to the library. And I thought I was the richest man in the planet. I had the library to myself. And I read, and I read, and I read. And I imagined a different world for myself. I read books about how to build sailboats and how to navigate by the stars." And then he says, "And I became the first person in my family to graduate from high school, to graduate from college, from graduate school. I became an administrator for one of the city agencies. And when I retired, I built a boat and learned to navigate by the stars." That was a nice moment for me. Another question? Yes.
Hey, I had a question. A few years ago, I did a movie up here called The Paper Trail, which was about authors and how technology has affected the creative process. And what I realized in speaking to a lot of these established authors is they were talking about social media and how even very big authors like Simon Winchester was freaking out over people not following him because book publishers wouldn't pick up a book if you didn't have a certain amount of followers. So I was wondering, in your work with the library and books and authors, if there's any type of programs you have to help young authors in becoming established and understanding this new world of social media that we're in.
That's a great question, and I suspect the answer is not explicitly so, and maybe we should, so I'll think about that. Let me confess to you up front, I'm not on social media. I don't look at social media. That's just me, I'm old. There is no doubt that in terms of marketing, et cetera, this is where everybody's looking, right? And so you're right, if authors need help to gain an audience, we should do that. The library does it not as authors, but on behalf of authors. We use our social media accounts, we use all kinds of online communication to spread the word about books, to make books available that you can read online if you prefer to do it that way, or order in print if you prefer to do it that way. We offer author talks, all kinds of things, and we also offer those digitally, and we advertise those on social media. I'll give you an example. Again, we'll do anything that will work to get people where they are. A few weeks ago, we had Dua Lipa in the library. Dua Lipa is a mega pop star, for those of you who are not keeping up. Great music. It also turns out that she's lovely and brilliant, as well as ridiculously talented. And she has a book club on her social media account. And she interviews authors of books she's read. And she did one at the library. And it was ridiculous. There were people I've never seen, like, paparazzi in the same way at the library. And people lined up around the block. And people online, absolutely amazed because of her celebrity bringing people to read, which is what she's after doing with her book club. And she's great at it. I was like, this is amazing. We should do this all the time. We shouldn't be stodgy. We should say whatever works to reach people where they are. It doesn't mean we should engage in social media activities that are not truthful, right? We see that happening all the time as well. But we can use these tools to gain audience and to help authors gain audience. And that's part of what we're in the business of as well. But I will ask about whether we should more explicitly be helping authors to train them, if you will. Okay?
Unpublished authors, before they have that, so they have a... Yeah, okay.
One more question.
Wherever you want.
You've done some very creative and impressive things with many different groups. So I think I've read somewhere, or it's my understanding, that a lot of homeless people come into libraries during the day. So I wonder, did you do anything special for that group?
So we are open to everyone, proudly so. And that includes the homeless in New York. And I remember when I got the job, people said to me, aren't you going to do something about the homeless in the libraries? To which my answer was yes, I'm going to celebrate them. I'd rather have them be in the libraries reading, which is what they have to be doing, right? You can't come into the library and spend the day sleeping. That we don't allow, sorry, we just don't. Or eating, that's not something we allow. But if you're going to come into the library and read, we love that, right? And we're proud of the fact that that's a place we can do it. When I was growing up, I never went into the main building in New York. It was way too intimidating for me. I used the Mid-Manhattan Library across the street. Largest circulating branch. It was a dump then. It was even more of a dump by the time I got to the library. But it felt comfortable to me. It also had the largest circulating collection. You could actually take books out of it. But it had been allowed to decay for 70 years. It was in really sad shape. And people said, oh, well, it's all right if the homeless go there. That didn't sit right with me, especially given that the main building, the palace as we call it, was spectacular right across the street. We invested $200 million to convert the Mid-Manhattan into what it is now called the Stavros Niarchos Foundation Library, or SNIFL, as we lovingly call it. It is our main branch library. It is spectacular. It has a floor just for kids. It has 3 or 4 floors of just books to browse and to sit and read. It has a full floor for business, learning businesses, starting businesses, finding a job. It has a full floor for adult education, English language, computer skills. It has a program floor to bring people together for author talks, etc., with, I think, the only free public roof terrace in New York, overlooking the main building, which is spectacular. And there are homeless people there, because it's at 40th Street and 5th Avenue. And that's fabulous, right? We want everyone, from the homeless and the illiterate to the Nobel laureate and the fancy professor. That's what we're in the business, and we want everyone to be together. They don't all talk to each other, but it means something that we're in a space together. It means something that holds us together as a people. So homeless, yes, absolutely.
To what extent do you rely on volunteers to run these various programs that you've been describing?
So we have a vibrant volunteer program. Please join us. Particularly in the main building and in the sniffle across the street, but also in the branches. They're invaluable to us. They don't replace our staff, but they augment our staff, just as we hope AI will not replace our staff, but augment what we can do, if we do it right, and careful to do it right. We love our volunteers. My mom was a volunteer, teaching English and literacy, and she loved that she was doing that so she could tell me what an idiot I was about X, Y, and Z that she saw at the branches. I learned a lot. Yes?
Are working on launching an online cloud with all the books of your library. Are you going to work with other libraries all around the world to ensure that you have all languages, all the knowledge that the world has?
Yes, look, this is a big project. It's an aspiration. We are working at it. I don't think anyone else is at this point. Other people used to, but they've fallen away. And we talk to our brethren, whether it be the Harvard, Yale, Princeton, Columbia folks that we're already partnered with on physical books, but we also talk to the other great research libraries around the world and say we're going to need to do this together, and we want every language to be a part of this. This is going to take steps. And we are committed to doing this in a way that protects copyright rather than running roughshod over it, because as I said, we believe in paying creators and authors for their work. And that's the process we're in. There's some legal issues we're still working at. There's some scanning to be done, but we won't be able to do, just as we couldn't do this without Google that's already scanned the 40 million books, we won't be able to do this without the major libraries around the world as well. And we will come together to do this, absolutely. Sir.
My mother was the first extension librarian at the Boston Public Library System. I grew up with an appreciation, a gut appreciation of what you're talking about. You know, the different librarians, the department heads, were socialized with each other, were friends. I have an appreciation for the different disciplines involved in a large library system. And I listen to you with envy now about New York. Okay. I now live in a small rural town with a library that has, frankly, a lot of limitations in not just resources, but in the skills or the training of a librarian, because I realize that there are many different disciplines and types of personality. How can you transpose some of the resources that you're talking about into the small town rural library, which is desperately in need of this kind of resource?
Well, I had dinner before this with half a dozen of the local librarians here, and I will say I think we were all struck by how similar our issues were, whether it's at a scale of a few thousand or millions. And that was powerful for me. I'll let them speak for themselves. And it sounded like they were doing amazing work and beloved work in their local libraries. They are what they are, obviously, and they are things they can't be and don't intend to be, right? I mean, just like a small college is not a major research university, and the major research university will have expertise, in its faculty that a small place can't have. I learned that when I went from Columbia to Amherst. Amherst had other values that Columbia didn't have, like it cared about teaching and its students. I love Columbia too. Look, the truth is, at the research library, the building in which I work, we've got curators with, unbelievable expertise. Middle East curators, Jewish studies curators, East European curators, African American curators, people who are like global experts at this. And they bring together collections and they create programs, and those aren't, that's not going to be possible in every small town. But what we can do is make sure that what they're doing is available to people in every small town. That's why we're trying to get those collections online for anybody to read. That's why we're trying to create online ways where you can ask the curator, and maybe in some ways AI, we're working on that to see what we can do that's safe and preserves privacy and is accurate, so that we can help you if you happen to be in a smaller place and need to go into that depth, right? That is the beauty of the technology, that we can't be everywhere, but maybe we can, the information and the expertise can be everywhere, and that's exactly what we're aiming to try to do. Stay tuned. Yes?
You made several comments about the spread of misinformation. Do you do much with media literacy?
So say another sentence. What do you mean by media literacy?
The ability for people to start analyzing what they read in the news or see on television?
Probably not enough, to be honest. But as we are now grappling with AI, we are talking about how do we help people digest and understand how to ask what they're asking, how to make sure that what they're getting is real. But I'm not going to pretend that we are solving the problem of, say, the destruction of, so much of the press in the United States for lack of resources or markets or what have you. I'm involved in some of those discussions elsewhere, but not at the library per se. But I will think about that. That's interesting. Thank you. Yes.
Hello.
Yes. Hello.
My question is, well, first of all, I want to thank you for the images that you put online. The pictures have enhanced my teaching incredibly. So, and the things that are in public domain.
What grade are you teaching?
Currently 10th and 11th grade.
Fabulous.
But
this is from the pictures collection?
Yes.
Great.
So, and the things that are in public domain can also be used for sale. So I can tell my students that certain images you can use and put into creations you make and use.
We're not selling them. They're public domain, but they can.
Right, exactly.
Okay.
So thank you for all of those public domain images. And then the other thing I want to ask about is you discussed that you are putting things online, but that in order to create a market for things that are no longer published. But if there is a market, then you would start to pay the authors. So can you speak more about that and have the authors agreed to have their things put online?
So this is a work in progress. You got it, absolutely right. The way you think about doing this is in tranches, if you will. The first tranche is public domain material, of which there are millions and millions of items, some of which are not available yet. So we're going to do that, right? And there's no question there that we could put up anything we want. Then there's the largest amount of the published word, if you will, which is in copyright, out of print material. that's a particularly hard place because it sort of does no one any good. You can't, if you don't have it, or you don't happen to live close to us and we have it, you can't get it because it's not available even for purchase. And we can't just put it up because it's in copyright, and we respect copyright. So there, what we've said is, let's figure out how to start. We'll try, and maybe we'll use AI to help us contact the rights holders. We've asked the Authors Guild to help us do this. They were involved in the Google suit. And we've said, help us reach out to the rights holders to ask if it's okay with them that we make this available. And basically what we found so far is people are either saying, sure, I don't care, it's not worth anything. Nobody's buying it, nobody's reading it. If you can get people to read it, fabulous. Or, either they don't care or we can't find them, right? That's another problem. And we've said, well, if we do this enough and we demonstrate that we're trying to help, not to hurt, then we can put more stuff up. We can use our rights as a library. I won't get into it, but we have fair use rights, Section 208 rights, as a library that a private for-profit doesn't have. And we can put material up and we can say, if we get this wrong, if you want us to take it down, we'll take it down instantly. But for most authors or rights holders, if they're paying attention, they want their material to be more accessible because it's the only way, A, anyone will read it, which is what authors want typically, and it's the only way in which a market for that can be generated where maybe it'll go back into print. And then the last tranche is we say, if it is in print, if it is commercially viable, then we will only offer it online by buying the rights to do so. We can't buy an infinite number of those rights, we just can't afford it. But the truth is, we're not in the business of making Danielle Steele's latest bestseller available to everyone on the planet for free. That would be a silly way to use our resources. We'll order some copies, we'll make those available. We'll order some copies of her not recent bestseller, and we'll talk to her about what is possible, right? Because there's no choice there, right? So it runs the gamut, if you will. Does that help? Does that make sense? Yes. Should we do two more? I'm sorry. All right, yeah.
So I'm a high school right now, right? And from all my
enjoy it while you can.
Yeah, thank you. I'm enjoying it, and
maybe not too much. Not too much.
Okay. So my parents and grandparents were always telling me that a book is the main source of knowledge for the people. It's the place that you can learn from, and it's the place where you could master your skills faster than ever. But right now, artificial intelligence and some courses on YouTube even internet is transforming it. And for me as a high schooler, it's getting honestly, it's getting easier to just ask ChatGPT, for example, to learn about machine learning or to learn about some specific skills than going to the library and searching it up. So how do you think books are still staying relevant, and how do you think I can still use books for my benefit to complement AI and...
Great question.
Yeah.
Great question, thank you. Next question? Actually, if you don't mind, let me get the next question and I'll do both, if that's okay. Who was the last one? Yeah.
Mine's kind of simple. Well, just one thing first of all. I taught at Columbia for a number of years, and I cared deeply about my students, many of whom I'm still in touch with.
I was being flip. I taught at Columbia for 13 years, and I loved my students and cared about them, and I know that the faculty do as well.
No, I know.
There's some Amherst folks in the audience. I knew that line would land.
No, and I think we overlapped when we were there. But my question is actually about the publishing industry, and you've talked a lot about making books available freely and also about decreasing the number of books you might purchase, say from an academic press, if Harvard and Yale and Princeton and New York Public Library all get together and purchase. And I'm not saying that any of those things are in conflict with publishers surviving or not, but I just wonder, with the greater consolidation of publishing into larger, small, even the small literary presses that still try to keep going are being more increasingly owned by larger and larger corporations. Is there a concern about that in the kind of library world, and if there is, what's going on there?
Great. Okay, well, thank you all. So I'll start with the publishing, and then we'll go back to AI and books writ large. We spend millions and millions of dollars buying books every year, both physical books and online books. And in fact, we're increasing our book buying budget at this point, partly because we can. I hope that lasts. That's true of circulating books, so in-commerce trade books, as well as the research books that academics and others produce. We have an interest in a vibrant publishing community, right? Because they are producing what we are buying and making available and what we believe in. And we're proud to be, I think, probably the largest buyer of books, period, right? Guess I should know that for a fact, but we've got to be up there, right? And we work with publishers. The fact that, instead of buying 5 copies of the same book from Harvard, Yale, and Princeton, I guess there's that's part of the squeeze on some aspect of the industry. But we're talking about nosebleed level at this point, right? Not only do we have an interest in the publishing community being vibrant, we have an interest in the academic and the scholarly and the research community we're spending much more money on fellowships, so that if you're not lucky enough to be a professor at Harvard, Yale, or Princeton, and you need to spend 6 months or 12 months at the library doing research work so you can get your work done, we want to be able to pay you or pay something to you to make that possible, right? We see ourselves as part of the ecosystem, a powerful part of the ecosystem, but we can't solve every problem, right? I mean, the universities are facing a set of issues right now that we obviously can't solve. But we are continuing to partner with the publishing industry and to pay the publishing industry and to keep them going. And we're proud of that. Look, I hear you in terms of AI and the new world. And one of my favorite facts of late is that Blue Book sales are going through the roof. So, for those of you who are following this, faculty, teachers are so concerned about their students just not reading, not writing, just asking ChatGPT to produce the result, the answer to the question and handing it in. So now faculty are using Blue Books. Do you remember those? Where you have to handwrite your answer because they have no other way to check. It's sort of a funny story, but it's also a scary story, right? We're going to need to find other ways to solve this problem. We're going to need to find ways to train our students to use AI to help them, but not to replace the thinking, or we're going to lose the power of education. That does no one any good. Will the commercial AI industry solve this problem without us saying that they must? I think probably not. So we will have to work with them. We will have to regulate them. We will have to work with educators as to how to produce results that are not just regurgitation from ChatGPT. Again, please hear me. I'm not suggesting that we can make it go away or that I want it to go away. The trick to technology, and this is true of AI and it was true of everything before AI, is to find ways to channel it to do social good. Left to its own devices, it will do social bad. Too often. So we have to figure out how to work with people to come to a different set of results. Let me use that to sort of say, people still want to think. People are still thinking. People are still digesting information at all levels, whether it be highly literate or not highly literate. I'll close with a quick story. When I was approached by the New York Public Library to come work there, to leave Amherst, which I loved, the first thing I did is I went back to my branch, the same one that we took down later and built affordable housing over in Inwood, and just walked around to see what was going on there. I was sort of curious, like, is it all gone away, right? It was packed. There were people there who were school teachers who were looking for books they could assign to their students. Tragically, several grade levels below what their students were in, but at least they were looking for books. There were people there who were running businesses out of the library because they had no place else to do it and they needed our internet or they needed our books or resources to do it. There were people who were just sitting and reading. There were homeless people who were just sitting and reading. I came upon a guy and started chatting with him. He didn't speak English, and my Spanish is but I got by. He had come to the United States relatively recently. He was living in an apartment, 2-room apartment with like 12 people, and working all the time. And he told me that he came to the library for lunch every day, for his break. It was the only place where he had some quiet, where he could like think. And then he said to me with some embarrassment, he said, I can't read. I was like, I thought to myself, well, that's interesting, you're in a library. I said, what do you do here? And he said, come over here. And he took me to the table where he'd been sitting, where I'd bothered him. And he showed me a book of Renaissance masterpiece paintings that he was looking through. And he points to it and he says, I come here to look at angels. And pointed to an angel. I will tell you, that was the moment when I thought, oh no, I can do this job. I have no choice but to do this job. But I tell that story now in answer to your story. People are, yes, people will find ways around. People will cheat. Technology will cheat. But people are people. They hunger for inspiration. They hunger for learning. The main reading room at the main building where my office is, I go up as often as I can. It's packed every day. The only reason you need to be in that room is to use the collection that's housed below it. Very few people are using that collection because they're doing that online. They're all there. They're there because they're human beings. They want to be with other human beings. They want to be in a space that's inspiring them. They want to be able to think. They want to be with other people who are thinking. No matter what the technology is, that's not going to change. That's part of who we are as human beings. And it's part of what we are dedicated to serving as librarians. Thank you all for coming tonight.